Good evening and welcome to our webinar, Dreams, a Blessing in Disguise for the Bereaved. I'm Pat Loader, the Executive Director of the Compassionate Friends. Before we begin, let me mention that all attendees are in listen-only mode. To ask a question, you will need to type it into your question area on your screen's control panel. To get to the control panel, click on the arrow on the top right side of your screen. Our presenter will be taking questions at the end of her presentation, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as we possibly can. Our presenter this evening is Carla Blowey, who has been a speaker and a workshop presenter at TCF conferences. She is also an author. Her book is called Dreaming Kevin, The Path to Healing. Welcome, Carla.
Hi, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You want to go ahead and get started, Carla?
Okay, I am. I'm ready to go. It cut out there for a second, and I wasn't sure where we were at.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate this opportunity so much to share my insights and experiences about an ancient tool like dreamwork. And I'd like to welcome everyone out there to Dreams, a Blessing in Disguise for the Bereaved tonight. As a certified dreamwork facilitator, I weave the principles of spirituality with personal loss for the process and development of psychological and spiritual growth through loss and transition. I began this journey 21 years ago as a bereaved mother who took the road less traveled, and it turned out to be the high road. I chose the path of self-discovery and spiritual growth, and it led to healing the wounds of grief in my body, my mind, my heart, and my soul. Because my dreams have taught me about my relationships, my life's journey, myself, offering this intimate look at the desires of my ego, the intentions of my soul, and the will of the divine. As you know, the death of a child can be a very lonely journey, but Dreaming Kevin has assured me that I have never been alone on this journey. Kevin is my heavenly coach, and he continues to inspire and guide me with the assurance that love remains. It's the fire that makes my heart light shine, and I love this work, and I love working with the bereaved. And that is the foundation that I bring to you today. So in the next 40 minutes, I'll focus on discerning the difference between grief dreams and dream visits and recognizing the potential for healing in both types of dreams. I'd like to devote the last, maybe 20 minutes to answering your questions. Usually this workshop has two parts at the conference, and those of you who have attended that or are thinking about it, and you want to learn more about processing a dream, you usually come to the sharing session later on Saturday night. Now that's not possible tonight, but it is an option as a Skype workshop, and I invite you to consider that for your support groups later on. So for tonight, please submit your questions to Pat during the broadcast, and I understand she's explained to all of you how to do that, and I look forward to getting to as many of your questions as possible, because I feel like when we have a dialogue like that, whatever comes up is meant for the community, and we can have a better dialogue with that. So dreamwork is this transformative tool for bringing our dreams of the night and our waking dreams into the light to see it differently. So it's about making connections with the personal and archetypal, meaning universal symbols, from our inner world to develop creative solutions for our emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being in the outer world. So dreamwork is beneficial for anyone who's grieving the death of a loved one, who's experiencing a major life transition or personal loss, for anyone who's working as a support group facilitator a caregiver, a grief counselor, or a therapist. Dreamwork is beneficial for those who are wanting to improve dream recall or explore their inner world. And finally, it's for anyone who's dreaming big, small, or not at all, because it's an opportunity to embark on this path of individuation, the process of reconciling the conflicts and the challenges arising from the profound loss of the death of a child. Now, I believe that everything we need to know to understand our journey, our grief, and our dreams, and ultimately survive this journey and to thrive on the journey, is within us. I believe that every dream is an opportunity to change a perception or heal a broken spirit. We must acknowledge the dream as a gift of knowledge about the status of our soul, and then treat that dream and its divine source with reverence and gratitude. So I understand the healing benefits of dreams to be this. And that first and foremost, all dreams come to us in the service of health and wholeness. That dreams reflect the status of our soul and our life journey, and they uncover the issues and the hidden agendas that block that path to acceptance and reconciliation. Dreams invite us to process grief in the safety of our inner world, gaining insights and guidance to survive and thrive in the outer world. Dreams allow us to act out behavior or emotions that are deemed unacceptable to ourselves, to others, and sometimes even society. Dreams deepen and improve our connections with family members, colleagues, friends, and our deceased loved ones, bringing compassion and understanding to the relationship. Dreams can bring assurance of our deceased loved one's continued existence if we're willing to see it differently. And finally, again, dreams offer strategies and creative solutions for our emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being in the outer world. Now, my appreciation for dream work began 21 years ago, although I can remember my dreams since the time I was 3 years old. But this dream work for me began with a precognitive and a prophetic dream, a dream in which I was given knowledge about an event in my immediate future, the death of my 5-year-old son Kevin, and the transition that would occur for both of us in the execution of our spiritual contract, individually, with each other, and with the divine. So elements of both a prophetic and precognitive dream can overlap in the same dream as it did in the dream that I had about the imminent death of my son Kevin. And this dream occurred approximately 12 hours before he died in a bike truck accident at the end of the driveway of our next door neighbor's home. So I'd like to share a portion of that dream with you this evening. Breathless, I climbed the last ladder stretching to the top story and pulled myself over to the wood floor. I scrambled about in the shadows and regained my footing to find yet another obstacle in my way. Stepping toward the closed door, I gripped the knob and abruptly pushed it open. Horrified, I came face to face with the blonde woman from the cult. Locking her eyes with mine, she bore a hole through my soul with her cold stare. In disbelief, I stood frozen in the doorway, stunned that she had found the children in me. Emerging from the dark, her flaxen hair seemed to illuminate the space above her, revealing the wooden rafters in the attic. She stood erect in the shadows like a sentry on duty, with her right forearm raised about waist high. In her hand, she grasped a long silver blade that pointed upwards. Unyielding in her mission, she summoned its power to intercept my path. Stunned, I sensed Kevin dangling from the rafters below her feet. Her relentless stare pierced through my heart, confirming her message. She had come for my son. In defense, I covered my eyes to break the spell, while a desperate cry of denial came from deep within me. Peering through my trembling fingers, I exposed myself again. With one more look, she commanded the door shut, leaving me trapped on the other side. Screaming like a madwoman, I beat my fists upon the heavy attic door that separated my son from me. Whew. 21 years later, that dream still hits me in the gut. But I don't live there anymore. And it's because of this tool that I don't. I share this dream with you because many bereaved parents report having a sense of or a premonition of their child's impending death. In dream work, there are several types of dreams and many levels of meaning. I was devastated by this nightmare. It was unlike anything I had experienced, yet its truth resonated throughout my being. Overwhelmed by guilt, I thought it was a warning that I had ignored out of fear. Ultimately, I believed I was responsible for Kevin's death because I had not heeded this perceived warning. And I suffered greatly for that misperception. In order to understand the prophetic nature of the dream, I had to suspend my perceptions and judgments. I had to explore my personal associations with the symbols. And finally, with a great deal of prayer and discernment, I had to be willing to see more. So as I began to re-examine my initial perception of the nightmare, I realized that my mind had written its own story of the dream and produced this horrific nightmare because I was too afraid to see the real interpretation. For me, it was that Kevin was being called to fulfill his destiny, and I was being called to pursue mine. So during the process, I discovered that these bizarre dreams, like my nightmare, are designed to stir the dreamer to wake up to a situation or an impending circumstance that needs attention. So living the nightmare, I was more awake than I had ever been before. So, what wakes you up? What's getting your attention? Perhaps you recognize some of these themes in your dreams. Have you ever been chased by wild animals that talk to you? Have you ever gone back to school and discovered that you showed up on the last day of the semester? What about arriving at an appointment but discovered that you were 2 days late? Or how about this one? You've bombed a job interview or failed a class or a test. Have you ever dreamed that you were a superhero or the supervillain? And have you driven a car in the opposite lane and realized that the car was without brakes? What about this one? Dreamed that you were Thelma and Louise driving off a cliff? Well, these dream movies can be upsetting under normal circumstances. For the bereaved dreamer, these heightened scenarios make us doubt our sanity and question our morals and our desires as we adjust to life without our child. So we tell ourselves stories, and our dreams illustrate the fears that created them. Our fear of being overwhelmed by the bad dream forces us to escape the situation by waking up, and it leaves the dream message incomplete. So the more fearful we are of the dream, the more power we give the dream in its negative aspect. And it's the same with our grief, because our fear of being overwhelmed by the pain forces us to escape with unhealthy behaviors and lifestyles. Fortunately, in the dream world, we get to act out those behaviors in that privacy on that dream screen. But, I haven't met a bereaved parent yet who hasn't gone down that road at least once or twice. The more fearful we are of living again, the more power we give our grief in its negative aspect, and this creates more suffering. And we repeat the cycle over and over and over again until we choose to live more consciously, And our dreams will tell us how to do that if we look for the gift in the dream. Now, let's talk about common dream motifs, and this is common themes in dreams of the bereaved. Patricia Garfield is a dream researcher, and she's the author of The Dream Messenger, a book I highly recommend. You can find it on Amazon. You can go to Patricia Garfield's website as well. She reports that there are 9 common dream motifs and themes in dreams of the bereaved, and I'm willing to bet that many of you will recognize these themes. There's the theme of something being lost, where the grieving dreamer dreams of either being lost or looking for someone or something that is lost. And usually the search is in vain, and the loved one or that thing is unattainable. Grievers dream of traveling on a journey by foot or bike or car or boat or airplane to unknown destinations. Departures and arrivals are always a problem. We dream of animals like lions and tigers and bears, and birds that swim and fish that fly. We plant trees, we uproot trees, we climb trees. We dream in vivid color, moving through dark shadows and fear, reaching out toward the bright light to feel safe again. We notice the warmth or the coldness of an object, a person, or a setting. We confront our personification of hell and death. We lift the veil that separates us from our deceased loved ones, dispelling the illusion of death in the afterlife. And we have these encounters with the dead or mysterious strangers, and angels greet us at the thresholds of heaven and earth. These dreams contain universal symbols that are created by the experiences of all mankind. They're called universal dreams, meaning that they contain repetitive themes of certain behaviors or psychological patterns that are linked to instinct. So people all across the planet are dreaming about similar symbols and themes through the perception of their culture. So you will dream what you know, depending on where you live, your gender, your culture, your belief system, and your religion. So while death, loss, and grief are experiences shared by all of humankind, hence this term universal, the individual's experience is exclusively personal in the context of that occurrence. So our dreams are showing us these unresolved grief issues that need our attention. Now, let's move on right now to dream visits, and then we'll get back to discerning the difference between the two. So our children are supposed to be dead, physically inaccessible, unreachable, untouchable, gone. And yet, after their death, we've felt their touch in a gentle breeze across our cheek. We've heard them speak to us in a song that's seldom played. We smell their aftershave or perfume in an empty parking lot. We notice pennies in the most unlikely places. And we've even seen our loved one in a dream or a vision, healed of disease, trauma, and disability. Whole and holy, illuminated with grace, wisdom, insight, and love. Oftentimes, these experiences are dismissed by ourselves or others, dismissed as wishful thinking or woeful thinking or just a coincidence. But with each encounter, our gut says it's real, and our heart soars with joy. Well, I believe this is a synchronicity. It's a word that Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung used to describe meaningful coincidences. And this is when a person sees a connection between his or her thoughts and objective events in the waking world. I use the term dream visit to describe this intimate phenomenon that I believe occurs as a soul-to-soul connection in the dream state, where we are free of the perceptions and the limitations of the physical world. The content of a dream visit varies with the individual dreamer's relationship with their deceased loved one. So I've got 5 points here that I look at when I discern whether or not it's a dream visit for me. I know that the quality of the dream is different from other dreams. The setting is colorful with vivid imagery, and it's charged with energy. The setting may be familiar, and the deceased is engaged in normal activities. But the one quality about this dream that stands out is that the dreamer is lucid. I know I'm dreaming. I know that I'm dreaming. I know that my loved one is supposed to be dead. They're not supposed to be there. There's also an anticipation piece to this, where there's something unusual that's about to happen. Our deceased loved one makes an entrance. There may be a threshold to cross, like going through a door or a gate, or there's a barrier, like a fence between the dreamer and the deceased. There's some barrier that is suspended and passage is granted. Next is their appearance. The deceased loved one may appear as you last saw them, in poor physical condition, or physically handicapped if they were suffering from infirmities or disease. And then suddenly they're transfigured to perfect health in the dream. They're in the prime of their life with sparkling eyes and beaming, peaceful faces. It's common for the blind to see, the lame to walk, the deaf to hear, and the mute to speak. Infants or fetuses sometimes appear as healthy toddlers or children. Our loved ones also wear clothing that radiates, or they seem to be surrounded or illuminated by a white or golden light. There's some light source that's unusual. And then finally, physical touch seems real, and the emotion between the dreamer and the deceased loved one is heightened. Next is the message or the communication. The dream contains a message from the deceased loved one and is delivered in ways that are most familiar or acceptable to the dreamer. Sometimes the dream motif will be symbolic or illustrated in metaphor. In our day of technology, we might receive a phone call, a letter, a message, something, a voicemail on an answering machine, a text, or an email, or even see them on a computer screen or a television program. Back in the day, 100 years ago, it might have just been with a letter that was delivered by a carrier. But as you can see, you'll dream what you know. You'll dream what you are available to. Sometimes these messages are direct and clear. They're either spoken or delivered telepathically. The message can be simple, something as simple as being reminded that the dreamer is loved by them. Disturbing messages, on the other hand, may be an indication of the dreamer's need for understanding or conflict about grief issues, or some hidden obstacles to reconciliation. And in this case, I truly believed that our deceased loved ones volunteered to appear to bring light to the darkness of grief. Some understanding is being brought from them. And then finally, there is the gift of the dream, the opportunity to see our deceased loved ones, our opportunity to see the grief journey and ourselves differently to achieve this higher perspective and reach reconciliation and acceptance. And there is that instant and total recall of the dream with this lasting, lifelong effect. You'll be able to recant that dream at a moment's notice. You don't even have to write it down. It just comes to you again. But I do recommend writing them down. So how do we prove the validity of a dream visit? Well, I always say that you won't hear me citing statistics or data or scientific proof about dream visits because I don't believe that any of it can be proven or disproved because I consider it to be a spiritual experience. It is what it is for you. Only the dreamer knows for sure what the dream means to him or her. I can no more judge your experience than you can judge mine. Now, that said, I hear your next question, and I'm sure that this will be one that Pat receives in the list of questions from some of you. The question that I hear most is, why can't I dream my child? Why are dreams of our children so random and unpredictable? Why does a prayer or a sincere request for a dream visit go unanswered? Because it would seem that given the depth of our love for our children, that this should and would guarantee a dream visit from them. But after 20 years of proactive dream work, I don't have the answer to that question, because I strongly disagree with anyone who suggests that a bereaved parent who is not dreaming his or her child isn't reconciled enough, isn't patient enough, isn't forgiven enough, isn't connected enough, isn't praying hard enough, or isn't spiritually advanced enough. It's simply not so. Dreaming is just one of the ways to connect with our deceased children and our loved ones. It's just more helpful to focus on raising our awareness of the possibilities and not set limits on how or when this will happen. Because if dreaming is the tool you want to use, then practice techniques to enhance dreaming with the sole intention of understanding the inner self and the grief journey. You'll be surprised at how this will deepen your connection to yourself and enrich and expand your continued relationship with your child. There's no doubt that a dream visit is reassuring, and it is healing. But the dream visit will fade to a warm memory, because at the end of the day, the grieving dreamer will continue to dream and receive messages and guidance to bring the wounded soul into balance and harmony. So how can we distinguish then between a grief dream and a dream visit when our children appear in both types of dreams? Well, by recognizing these associations that you have to your personal symbols and these universal symbols, you can more easily identify the patterns and the themes that occur in your waking life. It's no surprise that our dream self uses this lifetime of experiences to draw from to get your attention. Our natural tendency is to stay focused on the dream visit and ignore the bad dreams, the grief dreams, the ones that really push us out of our comfort zone. But the dream visit for me is a confirmation of something I already know, but I have forgotten in my despair and my grief. It's Kevin saying to me, "Mom, I am with you. I'm here." I was shown within 36 hours of Kevin's death that he had survived, that he still exists in the somewhere. So this grief dream actually carries more weight and meaning because it offers a summary of the status of the grieving soul. And that is where work begins, the process of discovering who we really are on this journey. It's a transformative tool for bringing our grief into the light to see it differently. We make connections with our personal associations and symbols, and we interpret those messages from our inner world, if we're willing to see it differently. So we can learn to distinguish the difference between a grief dream and a dream visit by suspending our perceptions or judgments and releasing those expectations. What is the dream saying to me at a gut level? It's instinct plus cognitive consideration. We can explore those personal associations to symbols and characters and themes. What do they mean to me in the context of my waking life, and how is it relevant? In my work as a dreamwork facilitator, I use the projective format to empower the dreamer to see how the dream symbols are relevant in their life. This format is an unbiased and non-judgmental way of giving feedback and allowing the dreamer to interpret their own dream, because I offer you my imagined version of your dream, seen through my lens. So finally then, using our intuition and our discernment with that kind of feedback, we have to learn the language of the Spirit, and we have to learn our own language. What is the divine asking of me? How can I manifest this in the waking world? How can I be of service? How can I bring healing to myself and others? So I invite you to use this simple checklist in discerning your dreams. First of all, let's ask ourselves, how do I feel about the dream? This is key. Sometimes it's not about what do I think about this dream. It's how do I feel about the dream? Because so often we get images and not words. And we wake up feeling something very intense that we can't put our finger on. Then we ask, is there a ring of truth to anything in the dream at all? Is it true to my ego? Is it true to someone else? Is it a story that I've made up out of fear that I want to believe? Does the dream help me to see aspects of myself or the situation in a new light? Who is presenting the guidance in the dream? And this is very important. Do I trust them? Why not? Why don't I trust them? I need to explore the relationship I have with the character in that dream. Does the guidance seem unreasonable? Would it harm me or someone else? Do I recognize synchronicities, those little coincidences that occur in the dream and in my waking life? This is a very important one. Am I manipulating the message to serve what I want it to be rather than what is truly needed? And finally, does it bring me peace? Do I feel connected to love and joy? I'd like to conclude this portion with one of my favorite dream visits from Kevin. And then let's start with comments and questions and continue with a dialogue on what's on your agenda. This dream I've titled the Halo Dream, and it is one of the most profound dreams I've probably had in these last 21 years. It has stayed with me. It has blessed me in many ways. And it is a dream that I come back to time and time again that gives me a fresh perspective on things. I strolled down the right aisle of the movie theater toward the best seat in the house, mid-row and center. No need to hurry. I was the only patron for the evening show. Seated comfortably, I noticed before me an enormous white screen stretched across the length of the stage. Soon the interior lamps dimmed, enclosing me in total darkness. Immediately I felt my consciousness lift up from the seat and move outward. Without effort, I floated through the black void that was once the screen to the threshold of a lush green vista of rolling grass and trees in bloom. I thought to step into the landscape, but sensed the shadowed void between was too wide to cross. Instead, the desire to see more provided an instant close-up of the scene. My attention moved to the foreground, focusing on a figure standing alone. It was Kevin. He stood there with his hands thrust in the pockets of his jeans, wearing a navy and white baseball jersey with a red letter A on the left side. My Kevin was smiling at me. There was an incredible aura of calm about him, as if he had never experienced a hint of pain since he last saw me. And to my relief, our deep connection with one another had prevailed, despite the separation. I sensed an exchange of love between Kevin and me that soothed my soul and brought me a moment of peace. As my heart filled with joy, my sight broadened and revealed a brilliant glow of gold and white light. A full-size halo shimmered around Kevin's figure as he maintained his pose amid its radiance. The energy that embraced him was a remarkable sight. My consciousness grew heavier as the desire to leap beyond the void to join him overcame me. A pulling sensation at the back of my head brought me back to my pillow with a thud. And instantly the tears began to flow as I reached out across the night to hold my son. It wasn't until later in the day that I could find the words to record this dream in my journal. I was elated, but could not verbalize the feeling of awe at seeing this glorious halo surrounding Kevin. I'd been gifted with his presence in an extraordinary manner unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Before this dream, the dreams of Kevin reflected my longing for the past and gave me opportunities to play out the memory of simply holding my baby and smelling his soft skin. But this dream was profound. We had finally connected in the somewhere, that place between here and there that seemed unreachable. Its numinous quality portrayed a concept of a heavenly state that my mind could understand, and its simplicity astounded me. It gave me the courage and the strength to do the depth work that is required for healing this perceived loss of the death of a child. And I will always, always be grateful for that gift. And so, I take your questions now.
Well, you're right. A lot of the questions are, why don't I have more dreams with my child in them?
Well, one of the things that I think is most important is to remember that it's not anything we can control. And that isn't that one of the biggest lessons that we've had to learn about this whole experience of having the death of a child. And so what I encourage people to do then is to work more on enhancing dream recall and dream work. So if they have an opportunity to buy a journal, put it by their bedside, and start recording their dreams, dream recall can start to, to be heightened. And then perhaps there will be an opening there. Perhaps they'll Hello?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's also one of those things that is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because if you haven't had the dream and you listen to, everyone else, and particularly me with, the one that I just shared, it can make you feel a little left out, certainly. But I encourage people to look for other ways of connecting. Perhaps dreaming is not the way. Perhaps there are other ways, other circumstances, other things that are happening in your waking world that can enhance that connection with your child.
Okay. Carla, you mentioned to practice techniques of achieving dreams. What would these techniques be?
Well, I have a little thing here. I always call it a guide to beginning dream work, 101. It's always helpful to begin recording your dreams. And in this way, you can begin to discern the difference, between the grief dream and the dream visit, and, what is a precognitive dream and a prophetic dream. So you get to know, your dream dictionary, so to speak. You start to write your own dictionary there. So number one, keep a journal of your dreams, because the very act of writing them down sometimes unlocks their meaning. And this includes drawing and sketching, making collages of the symbols or the scenes in the dream. It's writing a song, it's a poem. It's something that's bringing it from the inner world to the outer world. And then record as much detail as you can remember. Pay attention to the color, the surroundings, the clothing, the period of time, and refer back to the list of themes of the dreams of the bereaved. Record your first impressions upon waking. If you don't remember your dreams, this is an excellent way to trigger your recall, because we usually wake up feeling something, not thinking something. And remember that everything and everyone in our dreams can be symbolic of ourselves. So view the dream as a play or a movie of your life. Who's the main character? Who are the supporting characters? What's the main theme? Where's the setting? And then start to make personal associations to that dream. What's the meaning or significance to you? Do I know any of these people in the dream? What are my impressions of them? Do I recognize that house? Is this a memory? Is it a recurring dream? And then gather resources, about symbols and metaphors and scripture and myth, and learn about these things and how they relate to your life experiences. And then avoid the most obvious interpretation. Dig deeper and be willing to look beyond the obvious. What's the dream asking of you? How can I manifest this dream message in my waking life? And then this is the thing that I think is probably the most important. If you can't do any of these things, talk about the dream with someone that you can trust. Share it. Because when we speak the dream, the very act of speaking the dream can trigger more memories and more feelings about it. And then in this way, you bring that inner world to the physical world. And you can view it without that level of fear that we have in the dream. So it's about raising your awareness, trusting your intuition, and using your discernment. So that's my guide to beginning dream work.
Very good. Thank you. Do children or adults have more dream visits of deceased loved ones?
It's been reported to me that children seem to be the ones who have more visits, although there's nothing scientific about that. But what I hear more often is that they're just so open. Children are so much more open. They're not judging. They're not, their perceptions are a lot different than ours. So they're much more open and receptive to the dream world than to imagery. So it appears as though perhaps they are. But again, no scientific evidence on that, and no way to prove or disprove that.
Sure. Has anyone's dream seemed in slow motion or as if it's an 8mm film just off track? Also, dreams have not sound. Also, this person's dreams have no sound, I guess is what she means. Has anyone experienced that?
So the question is that, has anyone experienced a dream without sound?
And in slow motion.
And in slow motion. Well, I have. I mean, I know I have, and I've also had people report that to me as well. Um, you know, for me, and again, all I can answer for is myself and what my experiences have been with it. Um, Dreaming in slow motion has got to be the most frustrating thing because you can't move. You know, you can't get to wherever you're going in the dream fast enough. And so I would look at everything as a metaphor. So if I'm dreaming that I can't move fast enough and that everything's in that I'm feeling as though I can't catch up or that I can't move fast enough about. And the same thing, I would apply that same way to sound, that I can't hear anything. What am I deaf to in my waking life?
That's interesting.
Look at it as a metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Each time you see Kevin in a dream, is he the same age as when he died?
Oh, no, he's not. No, he's not. I've dreamed him as an infant, and I've dreamed him at the age 25.
Really?
Yes, and it was quite profound. It was a very, very profound dream. I had again crossed a threshold. You know, I'd opened a door, and there he was. He was 25 years old, and I was just in awe of that. And I was so in awe of his physicalness that I missed the message. You know, I was so hooked into wanting to see him again and then being able to see him in this beautiful form of a young man that I missed half the message, you know. But yeah, I also have dreamed him in other ways, like certain kinds of energy. I know that sounds a little crazy, but you know, it's the dream has some sort of story to it, and I encounter this very forceful energy that just literally embraces me, you know. And then, you know, something as simple as just being able to hold him as a baby.
Very nice. Can you talk a little more about hearing music, smelling things, feeling a touch, finding pennies? Do you feel that they are really a visit from your loved one?
In my experience, yes, they have been. But I was probably the biggest skeptic ever when, you know, when those things started happening. And for me, the tool has always been dreaming. And so, you know, the pennies from heaven thing, and, you know, having the sign or smelling a fragrance or whatever, I was very skeptical about any of that. And part of it was because I just didn't trust my own intuition. And I was learning to re-trust it through the dream. So once that started to come back into play for me again, I was able to trust that these signs were out there. And my way of discerning whether they were really a sign or not has a lot to do with what am I thinking at the time? What am I feeling at the time that this particular thing comes up? You know, I try to be as objective as possible about that, and you know, just now it's more, you know, about just having that sense and checking in with my intuition about it. So yes, for me, I believe that yes, they happen. I think that and I know this to be true for Kevin. Kevin has been quite creative in orchestrating some of those signs. And I hear reports, you know, many people share stories and experiences with me about that as well. So.
Okay. This person is finding feathers, white ones, in places where there shouldn't be feathers. Do you think that they're from her daughter?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer because you know, it's not my experience. Again, I would ask the, you know, the person who asked that question to check in with their own intuition and trust themselves as to whether or not that's a sign from their child. It's a lovely idea, you know. It's a lovely idea, but it's not up to me to judge whether it is or not.
Okay. Do you dream of touching your child? Does that imply a visit and not just a dream?
Well, touch is one of the qualities of a dream visit. You know, on my list of ways to discern, you know, touch is one of them. But again, for me, being the skeptic that I am, I want to make sure that I can cross off, you know, on the checklist all those other qualities of the dream as well. So heightened touch could certainly qualify as that. But we're looking at what all those other things present in the dream, discerning those.
Carla, there are many people here who are saying that their child doesn't talk to them in their dreams. What do you make of that?
Well, for me, and the experiences that I've had with Kevin, the times when I think that he's not talking, it's partly because I'm not listening. You know, and I'm distracted in the dream by that it's him. And not only that it's him, or if it's a dream about my parents who have been, you know, deceased for a while, and I dream about them. I think it's because we're so physical, we're so hooked into this physical world, and being so in love with this person that you know, we want to be able to touch them. We want that to be real, and so we get hooked into their appearance, their physicality, and that's all we want. I mean, I know that in the beginning years, all I wanted was to hold Kevin. That was it. I just wanted to smell him. I wanted to feel his cheek on my cheek. I wanted to hold him and rock him. And, you know, I didn't hear a word he said. So, again, in my experience, you know, that's as much as I can say about it. You know, it's again with yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think it answered their question?
I think so. I think so. This one says, am I in any way holding my son back by wanting to communicate with him in heaven? Should I stop trying to connect with him for his highest good, or continue a relationship with my deceased son? Is it beneficial to both of us?
Wow. You know, I don't think that we can blame ourselves for not being able to dream them or connect with them. I think that this is the piece that's out of our control. So I would like to say to the person who asked that question, please don't blame yourself that this isn't happening. There really isn't anything you can do except to be open and to be receptive to whatever it is that happens. You know, release the expectation, release the judgment of how and when or why or should on it, and live in the present moment with the blessing of having had the experience of knowing them. And then just let it be after that. You know, for me, the more depth work I do, the more I understand myself, the more opportunities I have for a renewed and more expanded perspective on my relationship with my loved one. And because I believe that the relationship just continues, it doesn't end just because the physical body is gone. It's like with any relationship, you have to work at it. You know, we have to, if they were here, we would have to work at it, and you know, here physically we have to work with it. We have to work with our marriages, with our other relationships, our colleagues, our children, our friends. It's the same thing. I think it's the same thing. It's just, you know, it's just in sort of a different space.
Interesting. How do we stop traumatizing dreams about the child's death? That is all I dream, her face after dying.
Well, those traumatizing types of dreams, those bizarre dreams or those nightmarish dreams, are the mind's way of accepting the reality, accepting, you know, what has happened. And in my work as a dreamwork facilitator, I use the projective format to, you know, give my imagined version of the dream. So when I'm hearing a dream about a traumatizing dream like that, where the dreamer is reliving and they believe that they're re-experiencing, you know, the death of their child, there's something in that dream that's got to be different each time, that they're not seeing. And I've seen it happen so many times where if we can just see one portion of that dream that we believe to be one that is a continuing nightmare, you know, or a recurring dream, if we can see one piece of it that's different, we can know that this isn't so, and it's another step to accepting the reality. So I'm not saying that the grieving dreamer hasn't accepted the physical death, but when you think of how traumatized we are emotionally and physically by experiencing our child's death, there's a lot to recover there. There's a lot to heal.
Yeah. Carla, this has been great. I thank you so much for sharing with us today. We're out of time, unfortunately. Our webinars are recorded and posted on the Compassionate Friends website, www.compassionatefriends.org. Our January webinar will be on the loss of an only child or all children. When you visit the Compassionate Friends website, you will find a wealth of grief-related information, a local chapter, and also links to our Facebook and Twitter pages. Good night, Carla, and good night, everyone, and be well. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.